Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the New Day podcast, where we just talk about life and everything, literally just what's on our mind today. That's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get there, I want to share, there's so much going on at New Day, and I just feel like this is a great platform just to remind everybody of all the stuff that we got going on. The number one thing that we are pushing right now that we believe that you are called to is to get in a small group. We got community group registrations going on, midweek groups that meet once a week in a home. We share a meal, share our life. We also have a couple of Sunday morning kind of classes for people, free childcare. But man, you need to get in a New Day group. You can sign up online at newdaychurch.com. Do we got anything else?
Well, I was just going to say, I was late to getting here for us to shoot this because I'm working on kind of putting all that together and reaching out to people and helping build the groups here at New Day Houston and Oak Forest. And a lot of people signed up. We have more people signed up than have ever signed up before. Almost everybody has kind of renewed, and they're coming back into community. And we're actually working with an awesome new family to start like a new group at their house. Halsey and I are going to help co-lead that group. So, man, there's just like a spiritual hunger and also like a hunger for community. And so, but yeah, I agree. If you want to be in community, we'll make room for you.
Man, that's a good sign when people are resubscribing to groups,
yes,
right? Re-upping.
Yes, and we find that usually when someone gets in a group, they usually keep being in group life.
Yeah.
Sometimes life gets crazy or whatever. Life is always crazy, but we've just, we've done, what's cool now, man, we've done this long enough to where it's not hypothetical. It's not I wonder what's going to happen. It's systematic. It's the same stuff. And so we've seen trends. I know we're big on patterns and data and all that kind of stuff, Moneyball, data-driven kind of stuff. It's data-driven church, But we've done this long enough to see that when people hop in, they tend to stick. And, and we're always tweaking groups as needed, in terms of we want it to be a life-giving experience. We want it to fit the season. So it's going really well, but we've got a spot for you if you want one.
Absolutely. Give it a shot if you've never been in a small group before. It is not an eternal commitment. Just try it out. I believe it will bless your life and family. A couple other things we got. Outreach, New Day at the Park, back to school bash coming up on August 20th.
At every campus, 3 campuses, 3 parks across the greater Houston area, Houston, Oak Forest, Magnolia, Pasadena. Got some fun stuff going on. It's going to be a great time. And it's also just a real casual event. Jesus just showed up in real life and random places, showed up at weddings and things like that. And so our churches are just going to be out in the community, and we're encouraging people, if you know people that you would love to get connected to New Day or need that in their life, then this is a great way where they can do that without having to actually come to church and listen to us preach, because for some people that might be a turnoff. So go find the event on Facebook, go follow it, and then go to the park and look for the New Day tent. We got cool canopies, right? And the last one is we got a new series coming up. You want to talk about that a little bit? This is kind of your brainchild, working with our teaching team. We have a new series. It's we talk to people, and we just kind of, we're on social media like everyone else. And so man, what do people need right now? And we're people just need some hope. Just some good old-fashioned Jesus gospel hope. Don't overthink it.
Hallelujah.
They need hope, money, marriage, life, all that kind of stuff, but need hope. And so we're just doing a series called Hope is Here for 4 weeks. Just every week you come, just so much gospel hope. Also, once again, this is a big, usually our biggest growth season when new people come is in August when school starts back up. And so same way, one of the reasons we're doing the Back to School Bash outreach is because we're going to connect with people and then invite them to this series. And so, we've had people that have told us, hey, listen, man, I wish I would have known about the series in advance. I would have invited my friend. So this is us telling you now, this is the moment to invite your friends over the next 4 or 5 weeks, because every week it's the gospel is going to be clear, hope's going to be presented, and it's going to be a great time. So we're just helping spread the word that this is a great time to start inviting friends to come check out the church. And once again, every time someone comes, people have different perspectives on everything, but I just think that people have an outdated understanding of church. And so every time people come to church, they're man, this is a good experience. It's music and helpful teaching and fun kids ministry and a lot of fellowship and free coffee and free everything. It's just a quality experience, So yeah, we're excited about the series and want to encourage you to invite your friends.
Awesome. All right. So there's so many things we can announce,
Yeah.
but let's just get into what we're going to talk about today. We just want to do just kind of off the fly, just what are we learning in this season? You know, I feel like we try to keep pulse kind of on ourselves and kind of what we're learning and what we're going through. And we want to share that with you guys, right? Because we're real dudes and we just want to share. And hopefully we think it is helpful for your life. And so, Pastor John, why don't you start us off, man? What are you learning right now?
I love this. It's so broad. I'm learning several things right now. One thing I'm learning is to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. That's a big one for me. Obviously, you know, my family and even our church family by extension, because we really are a spiritual family. We're going through a hard time, you know, with my wife and kind of what she's going through in her current diagnosis. And so there's a lot of uncomfortable moments. There's a lot of painful moments. And one of the things that I'm learning is to be comfortable in the uncomfortable, which is a very new thing for me. I'm a very optimistic, forward focusing, the best is yet to come kind of person. And there's a lot of value to that. But what I'm learning right now is to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And so, you know, in John 16:33, Jesus says, I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. And so, you know, Jesus is saying, hey, listen, you're going to be in this world, there's going to be problems, but in the midst of that, you can take heart. And I think so often we're maybe too dualistic, where it's like I'm either awful or I'm great. Mm-hmm. And when we don't feel good, we're like, well, I got to get back to great or something. And I'm just learning that there's a lot of beauty in the hurting places, the broken places. Discovering just the power of lament is a new thing for me. I'm reading a book about that right now. And I've always known, I mean, I love the Psalms. I've read the Psalms my whole life. And God has done some work in my life for this in the past, but just, I've always known a third of the Psalms are lament. And we don't read those. We read Psalm 23 and Psalm 16 and Psalm 1 or whatever. But I'm just learning to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. I'm learning to sit in that and not have all the answers. I'm learning that it's okay to be there. That's part of the life experience that God has sovereignly allowed. And so I'm okay in those places now. Yeah. And I'm also learning with other people how to walk with them. You know, when I became a young pastor, I did not realize how quickly I was going to be in the room with people going through the worst moments of their life. And I wasn't ready for that because they don't train you that in school, you know? And so, I mean, I've been in the room when a husband's confessing an affair. I've been in the room when somebody has got a bad diagnosis. I've been in the room with a broken marriage. I've been in a room with someone whose kid's going wayward, and I've just been I'm in that moment, that uncomfortable place with them. And I've always done my best to try to comfort and speak truth, but going through what we're going through now, I'm getting more used to it, you know, and I'm also finding the treasures in it. And you see that in Scripture too, which is how, even the Psalms of Lament, where it's God, I'm in a bad place. Where are you? Do you hear me? But then it often ends with but I will hope in you or whatever. So I'm excited about that because we live in hard times in a lot of ways. And so I think that the ability to, I think it's 1 or 2 Corinthians talks about we are comforted in our hard times to comfort others. And so I think I'm learning that. So I'm learning to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. But what's something you're learning?
Well, man, I just want to piggyback off of that because you gave a really great devotional to our staff team, and you said something to the effect of don't resist the things that have the potential to make you more like Jesus. God, and man, that was just so good, and that stuck out to me because we want just good things and we want just the praise, and those do give us a side of Jesus that we need. But on the other side of things, in the valley, we do learn a lot more about ourselves and about Christ. And you were talking about having hope in God. How do you learn to have hope in God when you never have to hope in God?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And you're experiencing that in your family in a very real way. But that just kind of spoke to me as you spoke about that. So for me, man, one thing, a little bit different vein. I call it the power of demystifying.
I love this. I know what you're going to say. Yes.
So this is good. So this is kind of what I'm learning right now. This moment we're in feels like it's really confusing. It feels emotionally charged. It feels like no one knows what to do next. Everyone's thinking about making a move, but not making a move. And my theory is that, man, most decisions that you need to make or that you or I need to make, they're honestly simple, and we probably know the decision we need to make or the conversation we need to have. The problem is that we mystify it and we complicate it because we are emotionally afraid of that decision. Yes. Right? And so we know what we need to do, but we kind of cloud it in spirituality or emotion or whatever.
Look for more data, evaluate more, talk to somebody.
I need to have more data. Like, you know what you need to do, and you just need to
Yes.
do it, you know? And so I feel like in my journey as a leader right now, I am trying to demystify everything in my life, right? And so it's like, I'm feeling bad at home, it's because I'm like vegging out and not working out. It's very simple. I just need to go work out. And I've been really trying to channel this into our staff team, because I lead a lot of our staff pastors, and just like trying to boil down like what they do and say, man, this is what you need to do. It's just, it's hard, which is why you resist it, but you just need to go do it, right? And so like the vision is clear. What we need to do is clear. And Jesus was always clear. Like I preached on Sunday, like most passages of the Bible are not hard to understand. They're just hard to follow, right? Because in your flesh, you have to overcome that adversity and actually follow into it. So that's probably number one for me. It's just like demystifying. You know what you need to do. You're just emotionally afraid or spiritually afraid to do it.
That is so good, and I agree. It's like the email sitting in your inbox.
Yep.
You know,
We got a few
it's
of
like,
those.
I got to think about it some more. It's like, no, you're just kind of like fretting the response or whatever. And so I think the good news in that, though, usually is once there's something about taking action that kind of helps you. And even if you maybe make a wrong turn, like you can often correct it or whatever. Yeah. So another thing that I'm learning is that self-control is vastly underrated. Self-control is vastly underrated. In Galatians 5, obviously, you know, there's like the fruits of the Spirit, and I was talking about this to our staff recently, like there's like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. Basically, Paul says like when the Spirit is at work or present, like this is what you're going to see. This is how you know. And like I said, we love the like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. But then like self-control is like so random.
Yeah.
It's like so different.
It's like the last one too.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking like, you know, it's like all these words like love, joy, peace, like it's like the thing that like your mom would have like on the wall by the dinner table. It's like love, joy, by the gather sign.
Eat, pray, love,
yeah,
joy.
by the gather sign. Which no offense if you have one of those, I think it's cute, but it's funny, like it's like love and joy and peace, but like it's like self-control. Imagine like self-control's on the wall. It's like in your what your dad would put there, you know. But it's so interesting, and so but going back to like we're kind of uncomfortable with that word, you know.
Sorry, I'm just imagining self-control next to the thermostat or something. Anyway, keep going.
No, the dinner table was like, quit eating so much, you know? But no, yeah, self-control is like vastly underrated. And so, but Paul mentions that, like, it's pretty noteworthy that of all the fruits of the Spirit, he mentions that one. And then, I mean, one of my favorite Proverbs is Proverb 25:28. Like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control. So like without self-control, like you just can't like make anything happen. You're going to be disorganized and ineffective. You're just not a real functional person. And so I'm learning there's so much value in self-control, but that's so countercultural in our moment, because what our world believes today is that freedom is being able to do whatever you want to do, right? But Jesus actually calls that slavery. Like you're a slave to what you want to do. But actually, he says like real freedom is the ability to even not do what even you want to do. There's a big difference there. And so people think, well, I'm free from everyone else's expectations, but you're a slave to your own, you know? And what I've come to find is, I know we live in like victim culture world, but like most people I know, and I'll put myself in this boat, the majority of my problems are self-inflicted. And I can blame somebody else. I can blame like my parents who are doing the best they could. I can blame anybody else. I had an imperfect childhood, grew up in a broken home, you know, like all that kind of stuff, right? But the older you get, the more humble you get. Like everyone's doing their best. And so, but at the end of the day, it's like, you know, so many of my issues are myself. And so one of the things that's really been shining through in my life is I've been like really focused on my diet. And I have legit, like I've always been one of those people that wanted to be like on like a legit solid diet, but I just never could do it, you know? And the last 2 weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, I have been more disciplined in what I eat. I've been doing intermittent fasting. And then also like when I do eat, I've been like eating less and eating better. And in a weird way, it's so freeing and life-giving, and I feel really good, actually. But it's because I'm not doing what I want to do, and that's the irony. And it's given me better clarity. I think I'm getting more done. I'm thinking better, and it's just kind of opening my mind to like there's so much progress just even within ourselves, and there's value in your life to learning to feel your impulse or your desire or your flesh and say, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Like you feel like big. You know, and most people, it's like C.S. Lewis, like most people think they've got things under wraps, but it's because they're not really challenging themselves. It's like when C.S. Lewis says, no one knows how bad they are until they try to be good.
Yep.
And so it's like when you really try to change your life and be different, it's really hard. And so for me, I'm learning like, even it's this kind of an interesting thing, like when I'm eating less and I'm not eating at night anymore, I'm kind of eating in a fixed window. Every night I get hungry before I go to bed. And it's always been hard for me to sleep when I'm hungry. So like ever since the pandemic, I'll go downstairs, I eat way too much food. You know, it's embarrassing. But at night I get hungry and I just allow myself to feel that hunger pain. And it actually encourages me because I'm like, man, I'm not giving into this. I don't have to do this. And I'm really beginning to see, and I'm sensing that pain is actually like my progress. And so, but then I've also been applying it to my faith, and it's actually my faith which motivated me to do this. I've always tried to be on a good diet, but recently I had this thought of like, what really got me to do it this time was I was like, I want to do this from a diet and health perspective because I think it's going to help me spiritually. Like it's almost, this is a spiritual thing for me. So it's been so much more of a motivating factor for me to do it. So I would just tell anyone listening to this, like there's so much power denying yourself of things to grow and also to honor God and to show God. I don't listen to like what food says. I'm not a slave to like what someone else says about me. Like God, I live for you, and my ability to be in this moment and to feel this desire and to resist it in your strength and power gives glory to you, God, but also gives freedom to me. And so I would just encourage anybody, especially right now, because we've talked about like people are coping right now. Yep. And as you begin to do this, you'll notice like the different ways you're coping. And so, I was even wondering, I don't know if I want to put you on the spot here, but you know, the spreadsheet thing we've been talking about, we've been like working our own spreadsheets, and everyone we work with, giving people spreadsheets, like you said, demystifying what people need to do. And we're doing that with ourselves as well. And we're talking about holding each other accountable and saying, I'm like, hey, James, this is what you need to do. You're like, John, this is what you need to do. Do you think that applies to what I'm talking about with like self-control as opposed to just kind of like bumbling around?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I have a unique perspective in that I lead a staff team of a church, and you know, we get basically our compensation is tied to like people's generosity, and so like I want to make sure that we're stewarding that well, you know. And so I when I get with the guys, or whether I get with you or myself, I want to make sure that you know we are like the focus of our time is on the most important things, and we can, you know, it's like you can't, your head is not a whiteboard, they say, you know, so you gotta like write that stuff down. And so I've really been noticing progress in my own. Well, 'cause here's my theory. It's like you say you feel like you're not a self-controlled person. Like some people feel like they are self-controlled people. Yeah. Like I'm one of those people, but my theory is that actually no one is self-controlled. We just have different vices, right? And so I've seen that kind of in my own life where I think of myself, I have a narrative that I am a self-controlled person, and yet no, I'm not.
You're not self-controlled. You are used to your jank. That's what you're used to it.
Used to your jank.
You're used to your jank. Like that's what it is. Like, and you don't notice it, but here's the thing. Everybody around you notices it. Yep. Your spouse notices, your kids notice, like you notice it, like, you know, and you're really good at giving me subtle hints of like not calling me straight out, but like kind of like saying stuff. And I'm like, I know exactly what you're doing, you know? It's like, you don't show up to meetings on time. It's like, oh, you're right, you know? And I'm like, there's never an excuse for the most part to not show up to a meeting on time. Like maybe every now and then there's like legit traffic, but it's like, you know, there's gonna be traffic. Like you didn't know there's gonna be cars on 45, you know, at 8 a.m. Like you didn't know that. And so, but it's like, but dude, well, let's go off the rails here for a moment. Because also when I was talking to staff, remember when self-control, like when we are uncomfortable with what's happening, we were always tempted to make an excuse to really get ourselves off the hook. Yeah. We are uncomfortable with the reality that we weren't able to get it done, or we weren't able to show up on time, or we weren't able to like follow through. And so instead of sitting in that moment and being like, John, I need to do better, realizing I can't, and then begging God for help to be spirit-led, I'll just make an excuse. And now I don't have to sit with that uncomfortable feeling that I failed or didn't do as good as I should have. And so I'm like, man, like, but the beauty of it is, and this is even like the beauty of the gospel, is like, you can't hide anything from God. It's obvious that we've all fallen short. And so we come before God, and God's never like, you know, well, you know, you did something bad, but this guy kind of screwed you over. So, you know, you're kind of off the hook, you know, like, you know, it's like the, you know, like anyway. But there is something to be said for like, you know, saying, okay, listen, like it's okay. I'm forgiven. Like God will forgive me. Like people will forgive me too if I wrong them. And so it's like, okay, I didn't do this right. I'm not going to make an excuse. I'm going to sit with this, and it's going to motivate me actually to start living the way that I should live.
Man, it's so hard, but it's so good. On the other side of that confession, whether it's like confession of sin to God, or whether it's just like me telling you, it's like, man, I know I should have done this. I didn't do it. Like when you invite people into that, it actually gets better. And your flesh says, no, it's not going to be better. You need to hold on to it. But yeah, man, that's really, really good. I got one more thing that I've been just kind of learning personally. And it kind of ties into this. I'm a highly anxious person, like confession. I am a highly anxious person. And, I carry that with me. And I think some people
I respect you for saying that, man. Like
it's just my wiring, and, that's just who I am. And so like, I feel like people are walking around with anxiety and they don't know what to do with it. And they kind of feel, I don't know. I'm just anxious about every situation, every conversation I'm supposed to have, every decision I'm supposed to make. And I've been telling myself something that hopefully will help you guys. And 2 words, it is zoom out. Zoom out. Because I feel like we have anxiety because we are like zeroing in on this one conversation or this one situation, and we're letting it dominate like all of our life and all of our thoughts. And it's like we're evaluating our entire life, our entire week based off this one interaction that we have to have, or this one decision, or this one project we need to do. And I feel like zooming out gives us the perspective to remind us that like, hey, like this is only one part of a big story or a big life, And I was thinking even for God, like God is perfectly at peace, right? God is a God of peace. And part of that is because he is perfect, right? The Bible says he's perfect, so he has every perfect attribute. But I was also thinking maybe part of that is because like God can see the beginning from the end, right? So God knows that in the end it all works out, which is why we can say in Romans 8, like, that all things work for the good of those who love him, And so I've just been like preaching that to myself, like preaching against my anxiety. Like you were saying earlier about self-control, that you don't have to give in to your anxiety. You can say no to that. You can do that.
Just feel it.
Yeah, you can do that.
And not react. It's like reacting.
Yeah, exactly. Like I can look at this emotion that I'm feeling from like it's almost like I step out of myself and be like, okay, I'm feeling this emotion, but it's not real in light of the true data I have, which is God is good. So I've been preaching that to myself in this season because I've been feeling a lot of anxiety, even more so than normal. And I'm having to do something with that. Instead of coping, I'm trying to go this direction.
That's so good. And I think there's probably few things that people are struggling with that word zoom out would instantly revolutionize the situation. And I think kind of give the perspective, and maybe you could even argue to some degree anxiety is when you kind of lose perspective. You lose perspective that God is in control, that God's with you. You lose perspective that like when someone's anxious, this is true every time. The thing they're anxious about is usually not as important as they think, Now maybe there are some extreme cases, but in general, it's like we've made something, like a molehill into a mountain kind of thing, That's awesome, man. So my last thing is, and this is probably my least developed thought, so but that's what I love about this is maybe we can kind of flesh it out here a little bit. I'm learning that to understand your present reality, you have to still be growing and learning. And a proverb I got for this one is like, the way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice. Other proverbs talk about seeking out advice intentionally. And I was just reminded that that proverb always applies in life. There's never a time where that's not true. Like you've always got to be listening to advice, listening to wisdom, like in the word, in community, inviting other people to speak into your life. That's always got to be happening. And I think what tends to happen in life, especially in crazy times like this, and even in my own personal life, is we come to a hard place, or a place we're not familiar, or a place we don't know what to do, or we're trying to understand what God's doing and we don't understand things. We try to evaluate our present moment only based upon what we already knew and what we knew in the past. And we're like, something's missing, or I don't understand something, or I don't get why God would do this, or I got to deconstruct my faith, or I've got to, is God not with me, or I thought it was going to be like this. And we forget that like we've got to always be learning and growing. And just because we're uncomfortable and just because we are not familiar with the situation, it doesn't mean there isn't an answer. It just means that might not have been part of your journey yet. Yeah. And so, I think a lot of times, like, when we're uncertain or we're in a hard place, there's so much growth and potential to learn. And I'm just learning that, like, especially, for all of us, because of what's happened in the world, like, we've never been here before. So, like, we should expect, like, I'm gonna have to learn a lot. I'm gonna have to learn a lot about God, learn a lot about myself, learn a lot about this new world. And I think that, like, we need to press on in the Lord, but just also be mindful, like, we're gonna have to keep growing to understand this moment. Like, there's so, like, we always talk about, like, when something doesn't make sense in your life, or when you've got like a weird relationship with somebody and you don't get why it's weird or why they're being like that, there's data you don't have. It's like 2x plus 7 equals 20. Why does that equal 20? What is x,
Yeah.
And that's true in your life, because you're always learning, because like you said, God knows everything, right? And he's perfect, but we're not, we're finite. And so, the things that, like, we thought would be black and white, there might be a little bit of, like, tension in there that we have to kind of navigate through. Yeah. And so I'm just learning right now, and anyone that's listening to this, like, what I know is true for you is, like, there are, things you don't understand about life or about God or about yourself or your situation. And what I want to tell you is a vital part of navigating that, and maybe even getting some of the answers you long for, is to be open to learning and growing, and don't give up just because what you had previously doesn't fully help you understand it. And this was a spiritual thing for me, but I had this thought. You were preaching on Sunday, and I was listening to you preach, and I honestly don't even remember what you were, I mean, you were talking about community, but I don't remember what exact point you were making. But as you were talking, you said something that that was true and I'd never thought about before. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, I'm learning something. I'm the senior pastor. I'm sitting on the front row, and I'm like a dude in the crowd, and I'm like, that's a good point. Like, that's true. Like, I need to store that in my mind and in my heart. And like we're talking about today, I just thought to myself, man, I'm learning, and I've become very aware that the way that a major way God is going to navigate me through this season of my life is by growing me, by teaching me new things. And if I refuse to do that, right, and I just stay where I'm at, then I won't understand the moment. But if I grow and if I learn, this will become a very profitable season for me in my life. And so, yeah.
Dude, that's good, man.
I'm still developing that one, but yeah, that's a thing where it's like, I think we're all kind of in that place. Because one I didn't mention here was going to be, because I don't have this one fleshed out. I was like, don't underestimate how much the world has changed. And so I just think we've got to be mindful that we're just in a brand new place, and so, like, we've all got to have our thinking caps on.
Exactly. Dude, we're in a new world. We were talking about this the other day, how, like, that in this season of your life, as we navigate this new world, you're probably going to take a lot, we call them L's, a lot of losses,
yeah.
But you were saying, like, L's aren't losses, they're learning,
Yeah,
like learning something
yeah.
like that.
Take
so
the L.
We're going to take a lot of those, and this is an opportunity to learn and to grow and to posture ourselves to not think of ourselves more highly than we ought, as Romans 12 says, but to just constantly learning. We're trying to fit new data into, like, old wineskins or whatever analogy you want to use. So in your life, what is X? And figure out what God's doing in that, right? So, man, anything else?
No, I love it, man. I love it. Like, I like coming in here with, like, some prepared thoughts, but also I just come in here and, like, literally us just, like, it's like, what have we been talking about in the office this week? Because we do this, we kind of bounce ideas off each other, and we're both, like, NTJs, and so we're, like, big on, like, patterns and things like that. And we're big on theories, But we just share that, not necessarily, I mean, obviously there might be some concrete stuff in that people can benefit from, but what I've learned is, like, when I listen to people talk, it sparks ideas in me. And so my hope at the very least is, as we're talking and you're hearing two humans kind of share our thoughts with you, that, like, somewhere in there something is going to resonate with you and spark a good idea in you. And so, which is the beauty of, like, social media and all these kinds of things. So excited. And we are working on eventually getting, like, a legit podcast going. Right now we're just shooting some content just because, we feel like we should. But we got some stuff coming. It's on the list. We got other stuff we got to knock out, though, trying to get 3 churches rocking and rolling. So, but awesome, and thankful for you, and I'm thankful for all of you. And I guess we'll see you next time.